Language acquisition is a defining ability within humans. And by acquiring our first language, we learn not only how to communicate with others, we also acquire culture. Therefore, an expert in culture, an ethnographer, will of course look closely at the language of the people she is studying. Moreover, she'll do her best to learn that language herself, to facilitate communication with the target culture. Very good ethnographers tend also to be very good language learners. This was quite true of one of the great classical anthropologists, Bronislaw Malinowski, who spoke numerous languages, including Polish, Russian, German, French, English, Italian, and Spanish, as well as the languages of the tribes he observed. Malinowski was born in Krakow, Poland, on the 7th of April 1884 to Lucien and Józefa Malinowski. His father was a university professor, and naturally his parents were quite encouraging of their son's academic pursuits. Consequently, Malinowski attended the Jagiellonian University of Krakow, where he earned his PhD in philosophy, with minors in physics and mathematics in 1908. But it wasn't philosophy that really caught Malinowski's attention. He came across a book published back in 1890 called The Golden Bough by Sir James Frazer, a study in comparative religion with a lot of information about magic as well. And that really sparked Malinowski's interest. Magic, religion, culture, the field of anthropology became his goal. And so in 1910, he travelled to England to attend the London School of Economics and Political Science, because it was there, at the London School, that anthropology had recently been established as a discipline of study. Over the next few years, Malinowski examined what others had written about the Aborigines of Australia and composed his own study of the Aboriginal family, published in 1913. People were impressed, and eventually he earned a doctoral degree in anthropology in 1922 at the London School. However, it was one thing to sit comfortably in London reading and writing about cultures, and quite another thing to head out into the field. Malinowski argued that each culture should be assessed and valued for itself, not in comparison or contrast to other more or less developed cultures, which was the traditional approach to cultural studies at the time. Unfortunately, he observed, we are in the tragic position of seeing native cultures disappearing around the world. They're dying out. So we have to get out there in the field now to observe and study them. We need to do more field work, which is precisely what Malinowski did. In 1914, he travelled to New Guinea, accompanying anthropologist Robert Marett. There, Malinowski lived with the Mailu people, analysing their culture firsthand. But then, when it was time to return to London, Malinowski, being a citizen of the Austrian Empire, was banned from Britain because war had broken out in 1914, World War I. And in one of those brilliant moments that change history, at least for the field of anthropology, the government of Australia gave Malinowski permission instead to study the people of the Trobriand Islands, where he remained on and off for about a year and a half between 1915 and 1918. And this led to Malinowski's most famous ethnographic study, the one that we'll focus on next. Of course, Malinowski didn't stop there. In 1934, he studied African tribes. And in 1941, he lived in Oaxaca, Mexico, where he studied the local market system. Sadly, it was in preparation for his return to Mexico that Malinowski died in the US state of Connecticut of a heart attack in 1942. In the Trobriand Islands, Malinowski carefully studied their culture, including their language, and paying special attention to the significance of language in their ritualistic exercise of magic. In fact, Malinowski wrote that magic, the attempt of man to govern the forces of nature directly by means of a special lore, is all-pervading and all-important in the Trobrians. Everything that vitally affects the native is accompanied by magic. All economic activities have their magic. Love, welfare of babies, talents and crafts, beauty and agility, all can be fostered or frustrated by magic. On the whole, such magic is divided between the sexes. Since magic pervades all issues that are important in everyday life, you can expect a man's magic to be used in those activities that many traditional societies leave up to a man to perform. So, for example, there are magical spells to assist a man while he is hunting and fishing. Obtaining food is, after all, very important. You don't want to leave that to chance. If magic can help, use it. In many societies that rely at least in part on hunting to acquire food, magical spells are employed or gods are invoked through prayer, asking them for assistance. Even in modern industrial societies, many people carry special items with them, charms or idols that they believe might give them good luck. Magic among the Trobrianders is basically the same thing, just in verbal form. Trobriand men also use magic for gardening, sailing, and to strengthen them against their enemies in time of war. Meanwhile, women exercise magic associated with pregnancy, birth, and healthcare, particularly the treatment of some minor ailments, although both men and women exercise a much more serious magical role as sorcerers and witches, wielding black magic. In general, men teach men's magic to one another, and women teach women's magic. In other cultures, the effort of the novice or learner goes towards memorizing the spells and learning how to speak them correctly, both of which we might associate with one's cognitive abilities. Not so with the Trobrianders. They believe that magic is learned by the nanola, or mind, which is located somewhere in the larynx, while the spells are remembered or stored in the abdomen. In a sense, the body is the vessel for magic, the organs of speech being the mechanism by which magic is learned and used. Opening one's mouth to speak magic, in other words, by using one's voice, is how the magic is once again released from the body to affect the world around one. You can see this is how absolutely essential speech and language are to the performance of magic. In fact, an individual incapable of communicating through speech is not considered speaking impaired by the Trobrianders, but mentally incompetent, since he is unable to exercise the one skill that from their perspective most clearly indicates intelligence: speech.